Bong bong do 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 do. Bong bong. That's all I know of that particular song. That's the Law and Order thing, right?
It's a Law and Order scene.
Yes, Law and Order. This is Linux and whatnot. You might have been fooled into thinking you were watching Law and Order, but you weren't. I know the production quality is really similar, but this is actually Linux and Whatnot, episode 9. Thank you guys for joining us. My name is Bryan Lunduke. That adorable man over there.
Matt guy. I'm the Matt Man.
You're the Matt Man?
I'm the Matt Man today. I don't know.
You're the Matt Man. So last episode, we had the head of the Creative Commons project, or just Creative Commons, on the show. And so at the beginning of the show, we talked a little bit about various Creative Commons stuff, which ended up leading to talking about my Patreon and all the things like that. And we try to keep self-promotion to kind of a minimum, and we don't do advertisements here and whatnot. But one fine young man over on the YouTubes made a comment that that got a little bit long. We were talking about ourselves a little bit much. Basically, we spent 3 minutes talking about not having advertisements. The man has a good point.
A little bit, yeah.
So he suggested the following sentence, that I just say this sentence, and I agreed. So for this one episode, I'm just going to say this one sentence as the self-promotion bit, and if people prefer that, and it still actually works, I'll just keep something like that going. Here's the sentence verbatim. Hi, I'm Brian, and if you love me, click the link to learn how you can gimme your money.
Yeah,
there you go. That totally works. Done. Matt, do you have anything to say?
FreedomPenguin.com, boom, boom.
You keep saying the boom, boom.
Boom, boom. Everything's going to be boom, boom from now on. That's going to be like my Smurf talk. It's okay.
Before we started hitting record, ladies and gentlemen at home, Matt said the phrase, Matt made a boom, boom. I don't know how many times.
Oh, yeah,
Okay. We've got
folks.
we've got the creator of FreeDOS on the show today, which is really just crazy neat.
That's pretty cool,
right? I have so much to say about that, but we'll save it. We'll save it for the thingy. Matt, it's time for me to sing the segue from this part to the next. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Are you sure you're ready?
I'm going to buckle in and put on my seatbelt. I've already made boom boom, so I'm halfway there. We're good.
My friend Matt made a big old boom, 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 boom. All right, Matthew.
Yes.
This is Linux and whatnot, but today we're going to talk about nothing but DOS, because we have the founder of the FreeDOS project with us, Mr. Jimothy Hall, or Jim Hall. Jim, what's your full first name? I'm assuming it's not Jimothy.
It is not Jimothy, it's Jim.
Just Jim?
Just Jim.
I feel like it should be longer than that, like Jeremiah or something like that.
Yeah, no, unfortunately not.
Did you ever want it to be longer than that? Wait a minute. I'm getting sidetracked and stuff that I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about FreeDOS for a second. Okay. All right. Let's back up. When did you start FreeDOS? To start with, for those who don't know, let's let Jim give the introduction of what is FreeDOS, because I'm diving into it because I know what FreeDOS is. But Jim, tell everyone what FreeDOS is so everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, so back in the 90s, and 80s actually, it started in 81, Microsoft had an operating system that was not too bad. It was DOS, and for the era, that was a pretty good operating system, and it was all command line. So if you imagine running your Linux system, those for your Linux users, and to run level 3 and you run everything on the command line, it was just like that. DOS was really made for running applications, and it did it really well. And I used DOS from however old I was back then. I'm not going to say. And I was very young, and from a long time, and then into college, and then throughout college I used DOS for everything. My career was my college career was physics, and I was a physics major, and I did all my data analysis, all my lab analysis,
because it's DOS,
using DOS applications, DOS
getting work done.
Yeah, it really was. DOS was really just a workhorse, and and so I used, as easy as a spreadsheet. I used Word Perfect and Galaxy Write for writing papers in class.
I was a Word Perfect man myself. Yeah, good times. I had the little keyboard overlay that sat over the top of my function keys to let me know which thing did which.
Yep, you had to have that because Control and Alt and Shift on all those F keys, and all the different things. Reveal codes, that was my big deal, right?
Yeah.
And so in 1994, Microsoft said DOS is dead. The next version of Windows is going to kill DOS. DOS will be gone. And if you got to remember what Windows looked like back then.
Oh, I do.
That was Windows 3.1. Windows 3.1 was not great.
Not great.
And I remember looking at that and going, I intentionally don't run Windows for a reason. And if Windows 4.0 or 3.2, you never knew, if the next version was going to look anything like that, I wanted nothing to do with it. And so I'd run Linux already at that point. And I said, so it can't be that hard to write your own DOS, right? I mean, Linus Torvalds and everybody else had created Linux, and that was a multitasking operating system.
Right? DOS doesn't have to do any of that.
DOS has nothing to do with that. It's a very easy thing. It's one program at a time, one application at a time. And so I said, it can't be that hard to do. And I'd already taught myself programming. I wrote a lot of utilities for, to make DOS better. And so I said, little naive me, I said, why? Let's create our own DOS. If Microsoft is going to kill DOS, let's make DOS better. Let's make DOS our own thing. And so it was June sometime in 1994 that I put out a little message to Usenet news groups saying let's
That's how all of the great operating systems start, is with a Usenet post.
Yeah, it archives it nicely so that people can come back and say, "Wow, this is when it happened," right?
Right.
Yeah. And that was the small start. We just getting together with other developers that wanted to create a DOS operating system, and it just kind of grew from there.
That's awesome. So that was 94.
Yeah.
So let's see. So that was 22 years? No. Yeah. 20. Yeah. Thereabouts.
Yeah.
Thereabouts.
My math is hard, but I think that sounds
94 to 2016. Yeah, I'd say
94 to 2016. Now we have FreeDOS for 22 years. How long was MS-DOS supported in development?
Oh,
somebody had pointed this out to me a while back. I've been involved in FreeDOS longer than MS-DOS was a thing.
Wow. That is crazy.
Yeah, it is. I had never thought about it that way. That was a really good way of putting it. So MS-DOS started in 1981.
Okay.
And it effectively died when Windows 95 came out in 1995.
Right.
Oh, what is that? That's am I doing my math right? That's 14 years?
14 years. So you've crushed Microsoft in the how long you're involved in DOS world.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That kind of suggests to me that you are probably the world's DOS authority. Like, I don't know of any other human being that's as intrinsically involved in DOS as you are, my friend.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
That when you hear those sorts of statements, how does that make you feel inside? Because I was trying to decide that for myself. Yeah. I think if I was the person that was the most involved with DOS than any other human being on the planet, I think I would derive some sort of perverse satisfaction around that. I'm really curious how you feel.
It's a very curious feeling. It's something I don't know that I ever at that time thought that DOS was going to be running this long. I mean,
right.
And part of me still kind of looks at it as like, it's 2016. It's nearing the start of 2017. And we're still doing FreeDOS, and in fact, we're still looking at the next version of FreeDOS.
Oh, really?
And it's just exciting to see that we're still doing it. Whenever I hear about it, just like that's kind of what gets me. Is like it really has staying power. It clearly does have a use.
Well, I have a question for you.
Yeah, ask away, Matt.
Now, one thing that comes to my mind is over the course of years, from the point that you started this all the way up to now, have you ever been surprised at some of the things that was used for that you might not have thought of yourself, like maybe by end users or companies or things of that sort?
Yeah. There was a company in Japan that made some sort of a tape robot, I think it was, using FreeDOS. I thought that was just way cool. It was some sort of embedded device that interfaced with some other larger computer system, but FreeDOS was the controller for it.
Neat.
There was somebody else who made a really cool pinball machine.
Oh, dude, that's cool.
I really wish I could see more about that. Ooh. The only way I can imagine you could do it is if all of the stuff on because it ran the board, it ran the entire board and the display behind it. It was some sort of a high res for the time display, and the only way I can imagine you could do it is to have all of the bumpers and everything else basically being keyboard inputs.
That makes sense. That would make sense.
Yeah, just a DOS application waiting on these keyboard inputs, and then it just sort of created score based on that.
So you would just like map it essentially, right? I mean, that's really all it comes down to. Yeah,
that's what I would think you do. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I should full disclosure here. I actually use FreeDOS a lot in my day-to-day. It's nice, it's free, it's open source, and I can have a nice little portable environment that I can put on my tablet, I can put on my desktop.
Exactly.
I can keep a little drive image file that I copy around. I have a little Nextcloud box I can copy my drive images to and keep moving them around. Right. It's really oddly convenient.
Yeah.
I'm curious, though, what you, Jim Hall, use it for. What does the creator of the GPL DOS operating system use DOS for in 2016?
I use it to play games most of the time. I also use it for testing the next release, of course. But and it turns out a lot of people use it to play games, which is totally cool. We actually ran a survey a number of years ago and asked people, how do you run FreeDOS? What do you run FreeDOS for? Yeah. And we actually found there are 3 types of users, and it's still true today, although it's been skewed quite a bit now. But you have one group of people that are using FreeDOS to play classic DOS games. I don't like to call them old DOS games. They're classic DOS games. Exactly. There's a lot of really cool games in there.
Yeah. One has to play Master of Orion 2 somehow.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I used to play Duke Nukem. In fact, I just saw there's some sort of re-release of the classic Duke Nukem 3D on game consoles. And I'm like, I'm going to fire that up again. So I need to fire that up at some point soon here. Blood was another one. Keen.
Good. The old Railroad Tycoons.
Railroad Tycoon. Pinball. It was really, really good games. There are a lot of fun games there. So that a lot of people will use that. So that's your main group there, people who run DOS games. You also have people who run FreeDOS so they can support some legacy business application.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And you see that every once in a while. Somebody has some DOS application they need to run in 2016, and so they're using a lot of cases they're using FreeDOS for that. One case was a couple months ago I saw. Now I don't think they're running FreeDOS for it. That's the only bad part. But some company is running. There's a luxury British car manufacturer that uses a DOS laptop to do all the car diagnostics when you bring your car into the shop.
That seems to happen all the time in the automotive industry. There was that story about the Commodore 64 that was running some auto body shop in Switzerland or something like that. And there's the Ford. Is it Ford or Toyota? One of the diagnostic systems is still DOS based. I know. I saw that like their official thing, and that's just mind-boggling to me. But I mean, I guess if it works, why switch, right? I mean,
why
it's
invest
weird,
in rewriting that software when you've already got something that works just great?
So all right. So a lot of people are using. So you use FreeDOS a lot for playing games.
Yes, I use it a lot for playing games. You see a lot of people do it for legacy software. Then you have some other people that are doing it for embedded systems. You don't see the embedded systems as much anymore. You don't see the legacy software as much anymore. These days in 2016, it's mostly being used to play those classic DOS games.
Which I get. So you, Jim Hall, you're a kind of a open sourcey, free software loving hippie kind of guy. Oh, yeah. I saw your laptop. You're rocking the GNOME on top of, I think it was Fedora. So I get a good sense of that. Now, these old DOS games, they're not free and open source, my friend. I'm curious what you think of this, because here's my feeling on the issue. I don't have anything proprietary anywhere around me. Not a scrap of it. Except on my FreeDOS drive images, which are filled with 20 and 30-year-old video games, and they're all closed source. And in my mind, in my soul, in my body, those don't count. In my mind, they've been long since abandoned, and I am simply archiving them as though my little drive image were a museum, and I am just paying homage to them. And if they were made today, I would require that they were free software in order to play them. But since they're like 3 decades old, or they're closing in on as old as I am, then I feel like it's okay, like it's morally justified. I'm curious if you've struggled with this particular dilemma.
It is curious because, DOS was a very popular system long before the concept of free software and even open source software really became a thing. There's a very ingrained part of the culture that shareware is a really good model. There's nothing wrong with proprietary, and so a lot of people who are running FreeDOS today have proprietary software. They have shareware software. A lot of stuff is closed source, and we try to find a balance for that. So I don't have any problem at all if you want to run proprietary software, shareware, whatever on FreeDOS. That's up to you. But the reality is most people are running some sort of proprietary thing on FreeDOS. And so I think we just kind of expect that. But we try to make FreeDOS still a free DOS. So we're paying very close attention. Even now as we're doing the 1.2 release, which is coming up soon, that it be completely comprised of free software, open source software. There's nothing in it that's proprietary.
Well, something that occurs to me that you brought up, you were talking about how it predates, the free software, open source, that sort of thing. I think it not only is it grandfathered in, but I think in addition to that, because it really is, it's totally grandfathered in my opinion. So it's okay. Not only that, but I think the culture was different for the DOS games than it would be, say, now. I mean, it was literally people were sharing the stuff anyway. It's like, hey, I got the latest whatever. Let's make a copy of it. I mean, it's, and as you pointed out with shareware as well. I mean, it was culturally, I think, a different time. So I think it is okay. I really do.
Yeah. It's, as I say, it culturally, I think, is the thing. It really has gotten into people that it's okay to run, this proprietary stuff on DOS. That's what DOS is really made to do.
It's like it's okay. DOS gets a pass. I would never, in my current incarnation, install Visual Basic on my computer. I would never do that, or Visual C++ or any of that. I just wouldn't. I would break out in hives, in a cold sweat. I just couldn't do it. But Visual Basic 1.0 for DOS, I have that on my DOS hard drive image. It's the most ridiculous programming environment that has ever been birthed out of any company or person. And I have no moral objection to having it on there and farting around with it from time to time. And it's the strangest thing because it's Microsoft Visual Basic, and just the words alone should send me screaming towards the hills. But for some reason, I find it quaint and charming that it exists, and so therefore I embrace it wholeheartedly. It's a very strange emotional reaction for me when it's all inside my little FreeDOS environment. Sometimes I use DOSBox as well, but usually on the FreeDOS environment. So anyway, it's strange, and I've noticed that I'm not the only person that does this. Free everywhere, but not with inside of FreeDOS or DOSBox. It's totally okay. Everything gets a pass. All right. I just wanted your thoughts on that. What I want to know now is 2016.
Yes.
You have a new release of FreeDOS coming. What on God's green earth do you do for a new version of DOS in 2016? Like, what do you put into it that warrants a new version of DOS nowadays?
Yeah, we had some long conversations about what really makes a new DOS. We had 1.1. It took FreeDOS a long time to get to 1.0. But and then we had 1.1, and that's been a really solid, stable system.
Yeah.
And we had this discussion about should 1.2 look like? Should it really look like one, but a bunch of updates? Should we try to change what DOS is. How do we define FreeDOS? Do we try to take like I for a long time I was looking at, should we try to project past 1995 and say, what would DOS actually look like if Microsoft hadn't killed the DOS product? They kept it like parallel with Windows.
Right.
So you're doing Windows, but you're still doing DOS. So what would DOS look like in 2016?
That's a crazy thought experiment.
It is a really crazy thought experiment, and it takes you into a lot of different directions. And by the way, the simple answer to what would DOS look like today in 2016, if it were still a competing product, it would look like Linux. That's really what it would be.
That's a good answer.
You'd have it is, because you'd have to have, eventually you'd have to add extra, like a flat memory model. Mm-hmm. You have to add multitasking. Well, a lot of these old applications don't do multitasking. They weren't built for multitasking because that's not what DOS was. DOS was a single task operating system. So you kind of have to architect your way step by step away from the classic definition of DOS, and what you wind up having is a console mode operating system that is no longer binary compatible with old applications, unless you want to write some sort of a sandbox. And it's 32-bit, 64-bit, huge memory, huge disks, networking built in. You're describing the Linux operating system.
You really are.
Kernel with DOS EMU, running as your sandbox. That's what you're describing. So we said, okay, we can't do that. That's we're not going to do that for FreeDOS. FreeDOS still has to be DOS. And so what we decided we were going to do is make DOS more useful. A lot of people, what software are they running? What kinds of software are they running? What would make FreeDOS useful out of the box? And so basically you look at 1.2, which is coming this year, and you compare it to 1.1. There's a lot more packages in it.
Okay.
And it drops them over because there's some other ones out there. It's a lot more packages. And we've also really updated, I think the other thing you'll notice is we've really updated the installer. That was one thing that...
you showed me that. That was looking a lot nicer.
Yeah. The old one, if you look at the FreeDOS installer that we used to have, 1.1, I actually wrote that in, when was it? 1998, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where it's like, we wanted to really update FreeDOS. We'd have a different new kernel. We wanted to update the distribution. So let's create a new version of FreeDOS. Well, the alpha versions of FreeDOS didn't actually have an installer. You just unzip it on your system and bam, there you go. So this one, I wanted to create an installer. And so I just created this I just hacked up an installer. It really probably took me a weekend. And it's anybody who does development knows where the story is going, because I said, well, I'm just going to put this out there and we'll fix it later and we'll make it better later.
Yeah, that worked out. Yeah.
And then beta 2 came along and we used the same thing. Beta 3, same thing. All these different versions through 1.0, 1.1, and all we were doing is updating the old installer. And I said, we need to let that one go. So I worked with another developer who really wanted to get involved in FreeDOS, Jerome Chadell, and he did a major redesign on the install program. When you actually look at it, it is really one large smart batch file.
Oh,
that's what it is.
It's
that's
fascinating
thing. It's just one large smart batch file, and he's created a bunch of these really cool batch utilities, what he calls power tools that really create the interfaces for selecting a language and whatnot.
And it looks nice. Like it's crazy, but it's like the nicest DOS installer to ever exist. That's. I mean, again, it's a really weird crown to have, but it's a cool crown nonetheless.
He did a really good job with it. A really, really good job with it.
All right, so FreeDOS is out there. It's been out there forever now. I mean, it's the king of DOS at this point, really, is what it is. Do you have any idea of how many people actually use FreeDOS?
Oh, that is a hard question to answer.
I know. I have to ask, though, because I'm profoundly curious.
I don't know. I really have zero idea. We have a lot of downloads, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of downloads per month. And that's been going on for I used to
hundreds of thousands of
couple
downloads per month.
Couple hundred thousand.
That's competitive.
Per month.
That's really
it's
competitive.
It's a lot.
I know a lot of fairly significant Linux distributions that would be thrilled to get those numbers. I mean, thrilled.
Yes, seriously.
Yeah. I'll have to look them up. I believe it's a couple 100,000, and we we get there's how many of those are long-term installs? How many of those are test installs? Sure. At work, in my previous job, for example, we downloaded FreeDOS so we could put it on a machine, so we can read some old data that some researcher had brought in. I used to work at a university.
Yeah.
That was a short-term install. We wiped that machine like 2 weeks later. But
still, I mean, the same is true for Linux distributions. I mean, how many people download, the partition, Parted, Linux distro just for a one-off and various things like that? That happens all the time. So realistically, that's amazing. And I know some people grab FreeDOS to do like a BIOS update or things like that. Mm-hmm. That happens all the time. But like for me, I know I've only grabbed it from your website a handful of times over the years, but yet I re-grab it off of my own private servers constantly, and it's on 80% of my devices right now, which is insanity, which means that FreeDOS is the most pervasive operating system in my home outside of Linux. And that's crazy to me that is the case. And I do so willingly. Like, so for me, for example, I kind of take the George R.R. Martin approach where I do a lot of my writing in DOS. And it's not because I only remember the keys to WordPerfect or something like that. In fact, most of the stuff I'm using to write in DOS is all free software as well. But I like having a portable, always the same, always consistent, no distractions environment that I can copy between devices that I have complete control over. Like I have no doubt that there is no one on the planet who is trying desperately to hack into my FreeDOS instance. You know what I mean?
I think it's a safe bet.
Right? And so I find it profoundly useful for actually getting work done. Now, you can do networking applications from within FreeDOS.
Yes, you can.
Do you?
It's a totally different world than, say, Linux.
Oh,
it's a totally different world. Do you ever actually do that? Do you ever actually go in to spend time in FreeDOS and do actual networking, instant messaging, whatever?
I don't. I use FreeDOS, as I say, to kind of play games or to test the new release. I'm not going in there. Sadly enough, the guy who did FreeDOS, I'm not going in there day to day to do my work. I when I write articles and things, I'm hopping on my Linux distro and I'm running something in writing something in gedit most of the time or LibreOffice, but I'm not doing it in FreeDOS. Sorry about that.
No,
by the way, I just
forgive
ran
you.
the numbers. I just picked up our download numbers. I was off by a decimal point. We are tens of thousands per month, so it's hundreds of thousands cumulative.
But that's
still really impressive.
Looks like we're averaging around 30,000 downloads for the last year or more
per month.
Well, per month. And I think an interesting actionable point on that is that you got to figure that out of those. Yeah, sure, some people are just trying it just for the heck of it, but I think each one of those likely is being used for a specific task. So that makes it interesting. It's not just willy-nilly. They're actually using it as a tool to get something done, and that's compelling.
And on top of that, we also have people that are providing FreeDOS as part of a default system. You can buy today systems from Dell and HP that have come with FreeDOS pre-installed on it, which is just mind-boggling. It's way cool.
So many Linux distributions would kill to have that position where there are systems shipping with the operating system, and FreeDOS has it. I am absolutely fascinated by FreeDOS, and I have this conflicted thing inside me. Like, it is both simultaneously amazing and brilliant, and I rely on it, and at the same time quirky and weird and makes no logical sense to me that it exists at all. The fact that you started it and have kept it going for all these years, and it hit a point where it has such good binary compatibility that you can use it basically as a drop-in replacement for MS-DOS, or in my case, I was more of a PC-DOS, DR-DOS. I was more of a Gary Kildall guy than a Bill Gates guy, which is actually, that's a very important question. Do you go DR-DOS, PC-DOS, or MS-DOS? What was your ultimate DOS prior to FreeDOS?
MS-DOS. It was definitely MS-DOS.
Was that just because of the market dominance, or was there another reason for it?
No, I think it was. I'd used DR-DOS and I'd used PC-DOS, but MS-DOS was just what we ran on our computer, and so that's just what I ran. So I think it was nothing more complicated than that. That was the version of DOS that we had.
It's a fair answer. Matt, were you a DOS guy when you were a kid?
A little bit. I mean, I think if I go back far enough, I spent a lot of time playing on a TI 99.4a using BASIC, and I'd be like, "Hey, Mom, look, I made a thing," and she'd be like, "That's nice. Go play outside." And it's like, "Okay, she didn't care." And that was the end of my programming career.
You don't understand me.
Exactly, but no, I think with DOS, most of it was games.
Yeah.
I'd say most of it for me was games because that was kind of where I gravitated to.
Yeah, see, I was a DR DOS kind of guy. Gary Kildall was like my hero for when I was a kid. Every 8-year-old has to have a hero to look up to, and mine was Gary Kildall for some reason. I don't really 100% know why. But I was into that, and then I became an OS2 guy, which meant I was more of a PC DOS guy because I was on the IBM side of things for a while. But then FreeDOS just absolutely changed everything in my life. So where does it go from here? So it's at 1.2. That's going to be coming out fairly soon, right? You guys are in the kind of the preview stage right now for like the final release candidates, essentially.
And in fact, literally before joining you guys here for this, I was exchanging emails with a couple of folks on FreeDOS and figuring out what the schedule is going to be. And we really are looking at a release before the end of the year. The pre-release, we put out pre-releases of the new 1.2.
Yeah, I saw those.
And just like our history of walking ourselves up to 1.0, we're kind of walking ourselves up to 1.2. And so we've had 23 pre-releases of 1.2.
So far.
Yes, so far. But here's the thing.
That's good.
We just released 2 days ago the pre-release 23. We're recording this on Sunday the 2nd, so it just got released 2 days ago. And it's looking rock solid. I only had a couple of changes that I asked for in a package group that just got added for 23. So 24, we all agree, is going to have those changes and nothing more, and that means we are rock solid and ready to go. So the next release, the next one that you'll see, will be a release candidate, and we're going to ask people to test the heck out of that. And
it's got to be solid because it's DOS,
and it should be solid. And so we just want everybody to just test it and make sure that it works great. And then if we need to, we have room in there for a second release candidate. I'm hoping we don't need it, and then we'll release. If we need the second release candidate, we'll release the final version in December. If we don't need the second release candidate, we'll release that by the end of November.
That's awesome. So,
that is very cool.
So new installer, but there's also new packages you're talking about. What constitutes new and worthwhile packages for an open source DOS in 2016?
Yeah, so a lot of them were things that already existed. In fact, everything we've got, already existed, was already out there, and we have a very rich set of software that you can find on our website, on our download site, and it really was just picking from there and saying, okay, we need to have software that helps you do development, and so we're including programs that help you do development. There's always an interest in different editors. There's always an interest in couple of different graphical environments.
Yeah.
So we're including those in there. Whereas before, I really tried not to include graphical environments. I just kind of felt that was not the thing we wanted to do.
What graphical environments are you including in FreeDOS? I'm just curious.
So what was in that list? For example, one of them is, I think OpenGem is in there. I know that, yeah, that's a good one. And I think Seal was in there, if I recall correctly. I think those two other ones are ones that kind of attempts at creating a new kind of a desktop. But OpenGem was kind of, that was always my thing back then.
OpenGem, right? OpenGem and its predecessors, man, those have been around forever.
Yeah.
They have. Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. So what? Okay. So and on the development side of things, so what sort of development tools do you ship with just FreeDOS? I mean, what sort of compilers and languages and whatnot are available kind of out of the gate inside FreeDOS?
Oh wow! Now you're making me remember what's in the distribution that I just tested. Actually, what am I doing? I have some of that list right in front of me.
What are you doing, Jim? Come on, man.
No, get on it. I don't have the full list, but I have the list that I made comments on. In the development space, we've got what do we have? We have a I think OpenWatcom is in there. I'm pretty sure we're including a basic environment or a couple of them, and I think Free Pascal I think is in there.
Oh, nice. Free Pascal is pretty cool.
Yeah. So we got a lot of that stuff. Editor wise, I was really pleased that we put FreeMax back in there. There's an old editor by Russ Nelson called FreeMax, which was it's so old it was distributed under GNU GPL version 1.
That's delightful.
Yeah. We actually had to go back and verify. Is it really version 1? Yeah, it really is version 1. And it really tries to be like GNU Emacs. We've got other editors in there, some hex editors. We've got a clone of VI because you need to have VI.
Well, yeah. If you have an Emacs clone, you need a VI clone. You know,
you got to have those. Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair. It just wouldn't be fair to ship DOS without both. It would be just ridiculous.
Yep. And a couple of other editors that people kind of like, including one that called Blowsec, and that one I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it's an international editor. It supports
like a Unicode kind of thing.
Yeah.
So okay, all right. So cool. So 1.2. 1.2 comes out this year. Hits brand new installer. Lots of extra fresh packages. Where do you go from there? Like, what do you do after that?
I want the next version to be 2.0. And I think at that point we need to look at what do we need to contain in FreeDOS to really make it DOS. And so we've long had this. We've always had this concept. Yep, I know. Here we go. We've always had this concept in FreeDOS that we need to have what I call a base that replicates the functionality of MS-DOS.
Okay.
And if you look at base. So I think 2.0 would ask the question, what's in base? And we've got stuff in base that is there for compatibility because it was there for MS-DOS. There's a program called Graphics that you hit the print screen button on your keyboard, and it would do a dump of whatever's on the graphics display, VGA, for example, to your Epson line printer.
Right. Oh,
well, how many people have Epson line printers? How often do you need to do that today? You know, if you're going to be running FreeDOS and you're running a graphics game, you're probably running it inside an emulator. And there's other ways to take a capture of what's on the video screen.
Sure.
Do we need to have that? That's one question I'm sure that's going to come up. There's restore or recover rather. Do we need to have that? Do we need to have some things that map drives back to or folders back to drives, things like that. Things that really helped applications move from MS-DOS 1 to MS-DOS 2 and 3. Do you need to have those today? And I think that's the question that we're going to ask when we get.
It's a fair question.
Yeah, do we need to have those? I'm leaving it open. I want to stay focused on 1.2 first, but as we get to 2.0, I think the real question is going to be what needs to be in base, what really defines DOS today. And I think I'll have my prediction is I'll have a hard time when we get there actually getting rid of things. I think I'll just wind up creating a separate package set called compatibility or something that actually has those.
It's actually a good idea,
right?
Yeah. I think it's a great idea.
So that's fascinating. So okay, it took a long time to get us, to 1.0 and now 1.2. How far out is 2.0? When you envision it in your head, is it just like, oh, geez, all right, we have 1.2 out, and then 2.0 we release in 2037? And like, are you in this for the slow roll? I mean, because it's not like everyone's sitting around going, "Oh, I'd use FreeDOS if only they could get to the 2.0 mark. Then I'll start using it." I mean, at this point, if they're not going to be able to hop onto FreeDOS, they're never going to be able to. But so what do you do? Like, do you set timelines in your head, or are you just like, let's putz with this, let's finagle with this until it feels right? Like, how do you do it?
I think because DOS stopped being a moving target in 1995. There hasn't been a real urgency to keep making new distributions like every 6 months or every year.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Fedora Linux and there's a new distribution out every 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
We don't have that kind of urgency in FreeDOS because it's not a moving target anymore. If you want to look back at when 1.1 came out, that came out in January of 2012, and we're looking at the end of 2016 for 1.2. So I think you might be able to predict what
so a while
when it'll come out. And 1.0 came out in 2006, September 2006. So there's it's about a 6-year gap there between 1.0 and 1.1.
Okay.
About a 4-year gap or so for 1.1 and 1.2. So
all right.
Hopefully it'll be shorter.
So I can look forward to version 2.0 sometime in my mid 40s.
There you go.
Yeah. So that actually feels good. I'll kind of set an internal clock for that. Be like, okay, in my mid 40s, I'll start looking around for 2.0 because I'm feeling a little antsy about it. So how big is the FreeDOS team? Like how many people actually worked on the lead up to 1.2?
We have, I'd say, dozens of developers that are active today. There's a lot that contribute kind of one-off, but in terms of the ones that are really involved, I'd say it's 2, 3, 4 dozen developers that are active.
Nice. Do you
That's impressive.
do you want that community to grow?
I actually do want it to grow. I think it'd be great to have more people get involved in FreeDOS. I'm not going to kid myself. I'm not going to say that suddenly FreeDOS is going to emerge in 2017 as the thing that's going to displace Linux. So in that way, we're not getting developers to change the world. But I think it is cool that we actually do get people who join the project. We get college students, for example, who discover FreeDOS for whatever, and they join and they might code, or they might do some testing, or they might do a system setup. But people are definitely getting involved today. And we are kind of growing, and at the very least, we're replacing the people that kind of drop off the project here and there for whatever reason. So
that's good. It's not dying. I like that.
At the very least.
Yeah.
Where would you send people? Well, Matt, you're coming up next, but Jim, where would you send people if they are like, you know what, I want my name attached to a distribution of DOS just to say I can do that, if nothing else? How do they get involved? What's the right place?
Join the mailing list. So go to the website, www.freedos.org.
You don't have to do the www. It's okay.
Actually, you do.
Do you really?
Our website does not recognize freedos.org without the www.
All right, go to the www, everybody.
Go to www and go to the mailing list. That's really the place to hang out. We have a couple of mailing lists. One for people who are just kind of want to be users and are looking for help getting installed.
Yeah.
But the one that's most active is the one that's the developer list.
Okay.
So FreeDOS develop.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure that I know there's bound to be one person sitting at home watching this right now thinking, yeah, I kind of do want to be able to say I helped make DOS. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that person exists. So. Matt, you were going to ask something before I completely steamrolled your brain.
It was actually in the same vein as what you were asking. If you had, using this as an opportunity, what's your number one need for the project? If you were to ask the audience to participate or whatever it may be, what's the one area that you could really use help with? Maybe it's bug fixing, testing, something like that,
I would say we have two needs. One for 1.2 release coming up. I think test. It's we need people who are going to test the heck out of that. And so grab the pre-release, grab the release candidate, and give it a download and try it out. I mean, just hammer on it.
Okay.
The other one is bug fixes, and so we have a bug tracker that you can find on the website. We did a bug parade about a month or so ago, kind of looking at what bugs do we have that are still open and which ones can people kind of move forward. So I think if you want to look at how do I contribute to FreeDOS, I would start by looking at that bug list.
Okay, that sounds like a really good entrance point. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's just so awesome. I part of me before you came on, and I talked with Matt about this, was like, we need to dig up obscure trivia about DOS, and we need to quiz Jim on it, because he's the man, right? Like, just obscure random DOS trivia. And then I hit a brick wall because I couldn't think of anything in my brain that you wouldn't already know, and then I just kind of gave up on it. But I really, part of me wanted to do that, be like, okay, Mr. Fancy DOS, do you know this? But yeah, I gave up on that entire thing entirely. Okay, all right. Those are the things I wanted to talk about. Is there anything you need to get out there into the world? Is there DOS news straight from Jim that needs to get out into the world right now?
I think the DOS news is really looking forward to 1.2. That's something I'm really excited about. The other thing is too, DOS is not my whole thing. You and I met at the at
Libre Application Summit, yeah.
Libre Application Summit hosted by GNOME, and I did my presentation on usability, and so that's a big thing that I've been working on outside of. It's not just FreeDOS. I do a little bit of everything, and so I do usability is a big thing I've developed an interest in lately. And so I've been working with the GNOME Foundation, and actually I'm on the GNOME board now. But I've been working with GNOME Foundation the last couple of years, doing usability testing. And so I also teach usability as an online class, and for the University of Minnesota Morris, and there's just a lot of other stuff going on out there. I'm one of those guys that, when I got involved in open source software, free software, you kind of had to do everything yourself, and so you kind of had to learn everything.
Yeah.
And so I kind of go where my interest kind of takes me. I did, like these days I don't do much system coding. I do a lot of scripting, a lot of website stuff, and usability. And so I just kind of go where my interest kind of goes.
I'll say, GNOME usability and development of an open source DOS is not exactly related in most people's minds, but I appreciate that you're all over the place with it, because I totally get it. That's pure awesome. So on the GNOME usability front, you did have that presentation at the Libre Application Summit, and I did think that was generally quite interesting. Mm-hmm. On the GNOME side of things, if people want to get involved in making GNOME better, more usable, etc., how do they do that?
There's a outreachy program, which is used to be called the Outreach Program for Women, and now it's expanded to other minority groups. And so if you're for example, a student and you want to get involved in that, it's a paid internship, and so you can join these different cycles and participate. And so we just had the usability one in May through August. I'm taking the fall cycle off while I get some other work done, and we'll see if I pick it up again for spring. But that's a great way to get involved. We had a lot of great work go on this last summer, and I'd like to see that continue. And like the user experience test that we did. I think it just needs more testers. I think we can expand on that one a bit.
Nice.
Very cool.
I just remembered I did have one question for you. Do you have a machine that DOS runs natively on at your house?
I don't. A long time ago, I stopped running it native, only because I found that when I was doing something in DOS, I was usually coding.
Okay.
And it was a little awkward for me to have a dedicated machine for that. It made a lot more sense to use, believe it or not, I would run Emacs, GNU Emacs, like actual native GNU Emacs on Linux. And I would edit my code there. And I'd use DOS EMU, which is a Linux DOS emulator. And it maps a folder in your home directory as the C drive that Linux or that FreeDOS will boot into. And so that means I can use native tools to do my coding, and I can just have the window, Alt tab over the window, and I can compile. And it really was a much more
It's the best of both worlds.
effective. It was the best
Definitely.
of both worlds. It was a very effective way to code. And so that's when I started really realizing that's the better way to do it. That's kind of the last time I natively installed FreeDOS.
Right, so DOS, and that at that point almost becomes its own little terminal with its own fancy little kernel on top of it. All right,
And it's actually interesting because it's actually more difficult now to find machines. I think it's becoming more difficult, I should say, to find more machines that will actually run FreeDOS natively, because FreeDOS, like any DOS, requires a BIOS.
right.
And a lot of machines now are UEFI, and they have a BIOS compatibility layer. But if the manufacturer doesn't want to put a compatibility layer in there, they don't have to. And so you're starting to find some systems that don't even have a BIOS, and they can't run DOS. And I think that's going to become probably the norm as we go ahead. So it's going to be harder and harder to find DOS to run on new actual hardware.
That is both completely understandable and really sad.
It is. It is,
Well,
actually, yeah.
Yeah, it really stinks. I mean, like, so for the benefit of our viewers, what you're saying is even if there's a means of turning off that nonsense that the industry kind of went with, it still has to physically have it actually has to have true BIOS compatibility. It's not just a matter of toggling something on or off.
Exactly. It has to be there.
That's crazy. How do you, as a person, not get completely burnt out on DOS? Like, how have you been going this long? That's a lot of years to be helming a project, creating an open source, anything, literally anything. I don't know if I mean Linus has been doing it for a long time, but he's kind of the exception rather than the rule. How have you been doing it without just giving up, hucking it out and saying it's up on the repo, you guys do what you want with it? Like, how have you gotten to this point?
Well, as I say, I kind of float to where my interests are, and so I did coding for a long time. But as the guy kind of running the project, I had to do a lot of other things, and so my interests and sort of needs really kind of took me to other places. And so I stopped doing as much coding, and so I could do the website, I do the social media, I do a whole bunch of other stuff. So my what I consider my interactions with FreeDOS is more than just coding something that hooks into Int13 or something. It's actually something that actually is
Int13 is life, man.
I know, Int13, Int21, and it's so my FreeDOS work now could be shell scripting something for the website. It could be cutting new pages for the website. Right now, I'm redesigning.
You
the
move
website
around a little bit within the project. Yeah,
I kind of float around. I do a lot of different stuff. Yeah, so
that's a good way to not get burnt out.
What helps you help with that?
Side note, also crazy that there is an actively maintained version of DOS that has a Twitter handle. That
Yes.
Wow. Right? But that's cool. That's a good thing. Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, it is. Everything about FreeDOS is cool and funny, both at the same time for me. Like, I use it for work, but I find myself amused at myself using it for work that way. It's like when George R.R. Martin talks about writing all of the Game of Thrones books, on his old, I think it's a 486, running an old version of WordStar 4 and MS-DOS 4.0. I think he's
I don't know what version, but it is. He is definitely running MS-DOS.
Yeah, he definitely is. You can look up pictures of it online. It's incredible. He's still got an old PC running it, and it's. I give him kudos to that. Obviously, it works for him, though some might argue that maybe his books would get out faster if he used a different machine. But just the same, you got to know that it gives him some sort of perverse sense of amusement to know that he's using such an ancient, quote-unquote, machine to build what is essentially one of the largest franchises in the world.
Yeah.
It's just delightful. I love it
He
so
loves
much.
doing that because it means that he can't get distracted. He can't like alt tab to another window and do Facebook or YouTube or something.
Yeah.
He has to stay focused on the book.
Exactly. When he's done writing for the day, he exits out of WordStar and boom, he can load up, SimCity version 1. He can do Ultima 4, whatever it is he wants to run at that point. Jim, thank you for all the work you do. I really do mean it. I do use it all week, every week. It is fantastic. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on. And I have one final thing to ask of you. Have you watched this show before, all the way through to the end?
I'll be honest, no, I have not.
Okay.
Well, you are in for a treat, my friend. So here's how this works.
Oh, God.
So this particular show, we release it under the Creative Commons, and it's delightful and wonderful and all that good stuff. And one of the things we decided to do was to not have a theme song that we get from someone else. We don't have to worry about licensing, and we get to kind of shake it up. So what we do, because you have to have music in a show, is at the beginning of the show, either myself or Matt sing the intro theme song, usually around 5 to 10 seconds of a little ditty. The ones that Matt does usually end with a fart noise, and they're absolutely delightful. They're just fantastic. It's true. And now, what we like to offer for our guests, as we approach the end of the show, is if they would like to sing the outro theme song for this particular show. Now, the nice part here is, it can be anything. When I say, Matt, sing the intro, it usually ends up being some sort of a hodgepodge of 1980s action shows. The A-Team, Airwolf, things like that find its way in there. I believe a Max Headroom found its way in there a little bit on one. I'm not 100% certain. There's homages is what I'm saying. Now, we have a rule here. When we only have one guest on, we do not force the guest to do this. If we have two guests on, we force one of them to do it because we're mean. But since there's one, you do have an out. However, remember this. If you decline, then Matt has to do it. And that will make Matt really sad. Jim, would you like to sing the outro theme song for this episode of Linux and Whatnot?
I will. Yeah. I can do 007.
Oh, very cool.
Jim,
here we go.
Thank you again. FreeDOS.org. Sorry, www.freedos.org. Did they have to include the HTTPs and the colons and the whatnots?
No, your browser can figure that one.
Okay, all right. Everybody, singing out this episode of Linux and Whatnot, the founder of the FreeDOS project and known board member, Jim Hall.
There we go.
Nice.
Amazing.
That was awesome.
I even made my hair all disheveled. That was so good.
That was awesome.
My friend Matt made a big old boom, 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 boom. That's after the outro. That dance is going in.